Okay, sure, guys.
Bofoke. Wagwa. Wagwa. Je pousse. Je pousse.
Oh, am I on a live mic? I don't know if so I shouldn't say mischievous things. Okay, do you want to sit up there and then I'll sit up? Okay. And then I'll scoot. Great. Are we in your frame? Is it white? Okay. I can hear myself in an echo. Oh, la la, old age. Ah. Hello. My goodness. I recently acquired a new personal trainer. Yesterday was leg day. Uh-oh. Today it's starting to, but by tomorrow, I think I'm gonna be struggling. Oh my goodness. But it's okay. Okay, so hi everyone. Cape Town can hear us okay? And we are both in your frame. You're happy. Okay, so we're gonna kick off. I'm going to read Marlene's bio because we just met. We're both from Zimbabwe, it turns out, which I didn't know. And you met Scott Hanselman the other day. Scott Hanselman is a good friend of mine that I met when I still used to consult in technology, and I used to speak internationally. I think we met in Sweden. Wow. I've forgotten where. And we've been friends since. And then I found out that his wife is Zimbabwean. Exactly. And so that was fun. And so I'm very excited that Microsoft seems to have an affinity for people who are at least Zimbabwean. Exactly. But Lebo sent me your bio, which I'm going to read because I don't want to leave anything out because it's a juicy bio. And you have that look of a person where I'm like, so what have I been doing my whole life? Because you've achieved so much. So Marlene is a software engineer, an explorer, and speaker currently based in London. We're in London.
I live in Paddington right now.
You live in Paddington.
I don't know Paddington there. Yeah, it's a nice place.
And she's a senior developer advocate, and we're going to talk about what that means to be a developer. So can we not talk all at the same time? Just it makes it hard up here. It's a bit of pressure because you guys are intimidating. So you need to just give us some room. So working at Microsoft, focusing on Python and AI. I think we know a little bit about Python. Scott talked to us a little bit about AI, mostly about cheating with ChatGPT. And then previously, you were director and vice chair for the Python Software Foundation.
Yes, exactly.
That's big. Okay. And then you're currently serving as the vice chair of the Association for Computing Machinery.
Yes, exactly.
Practitioner board. And you're looking and you're saying she's so young when, right? Also me. And then in 2017, she co-founded Zimbo Pi. I actually had a funny conversation with someone, I think it was my trainer, when he was saying he didn't know that Zimbabweans called themselves Zimbos and he thought it was derogatory. I was like, oh no, that one we gave ourselves. And then a non-profit organization, a non-profit organization that gives Zimbabwean young women access to resources in the field of technology. You should tell me more about that. I'd love to help. She's also the previous chair of PyCon Africa.
Yes.
And is an advocate for women in tech on the continent. So this is Marlene. And so she's going to be here for about an hour. The format we're going to try go with is we're going to have a short chat where I try to interview you. And then you're going to do a bit of a talk about the history of Python and AI. And then we'll open it up for questions.
Exactly.
So I'm going to set a timer on my watch because I am very, very curious about your career. And without a control measure, it's going to be me just asking you a lot of questions for too long. So I'm going to take not more than 10 minutes.
Okay.
And the time starts now. Right. So, grew up in Harare. Turns out very close to where my mother lives right now.
Yeah.
How do we go from young girl in Harare to director of PyCon Africa, vice chair of this, Microsoft, and all these big things? Exactly. How did you go from young girl with a dream to big girl with the CV?
Exactly. So I was telling Yari earlier that my journey has not been normal at all. And it is a journey where, I started, I grew up in Harare, but then I went to college in the US for a bit. And when I was going to college, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. So I was studying pre-medicine. Turns out I didn't want to be a doctor. I don't like seeing blood. You have to see blood if you're going to be a doctor. I didn't know that at the time. So it turns out you have to do that. And I didn't want to do that. And it was really difficult in terms of this. I just felt like I was memorizing a lot and wasn't really using my brain in the way that I wanted to. And so I had some time. I remember it was like, it's quite expensive to study in the US. So my parents actually had a really tough year. My dad had a tough year and I had to go back home for a bit and like left school. And I spent a year when I was back home trying to figure out, okay, what exactly do I want to do? Because my parents were like, okay, after a year, then you can go back. And we would have, saved enough for school. And during that year, I decided to just explore. And I decided I wanted to try out different things. And in that process, I actually discovered coding. And it was like this thing where I was like trying something else and I thought I wanted to do a nonprofit. But then through that, I started to teach myself how to code. And I taught myself primarily with Python. And at the same time, when I was learning how to code, because I was like, oh, I would love to teach other people, I discovered that I really liked it. That I enjoyed coding in Python. I thought there were so many things you can do. And yeah, and then I went back to school online with the University of London. I then was, speaking at conferences, showing the things that I had built with Python at Python conferences.
Yeah.
Someone from NVIDIA saw me giving a talk, asked me if I wanted to interview for a job role. I said yes, I want to interview for an internship.
Yeah.
And then I got the internship and was working remotely for NVIDIA for almost 2 years. And so that was amazing. Such a great opportunity, but it came from really being involved in the Python community, building stuff on my own. And then obviously from there, the doors were open for me. I worked a little bit for a startup. And then just recently, it's been about a year now for being at Microsoft. So
I want to hear the conversation with Zimbabwean parents where you go from I'm studying to be a doctor to I don't like blood.
Yeah.
And I don't know your parents at all.
Exactly.
But I know Zimbabwean parents in general.
Yeah.
How'd that go?
Yeah. It didn't go great. I think my mom is so supportive and my mom is so sweet and she's like, yeah, if you could, do you want to do anything? You can do it. Jesus loves you. Jesus will make a way. So, my mom is like, do anything you want to do. My dad, on the other hand, at first he was kind of open. He was like, okay, have some time to like figure out what you want to do. But after like a couple of months, he was like, okay, when are you going to earn a salary? When are you going to do something? Yeah. So my dad was a bit more like, he was pressuring me to like figure out what I wanted to do or go back to school. So I knew I had a timeline to figure it out. So I was like, if this year is up, my dad is going to be like, no, you got to go back to school. So yeah.
And I think you touched on a few things that are interesting.
Yeah.
I know definitely a lot of times people think of careers as very linear.
Yeah.
You finish high school, you pass with straight A's, you get into university, you study at university, you finish that degree, and then you get your job that is based on your degree. So
exactly.
High school, medicine, doctor,
done.
Senior doctor, retired, done. And yet more and more, especially with computer science, you meet a lot of people that come upon it from another angle, studying and doing research and had to program something. It's not like, oh, no. Now I'm more interested in the programming than the research. And they change around. But what I find very interesting is how your activity in the community then opens a path. Because I think this is something we try to talk to Meeting Code students about a lot, which is how every employer wants a person not necessarily who on day one has the exact skills, but often people who can demonstrate that when they come in, they're going to contribute. And the best way to assess for that is you check the history. So were you just showing up at school and leaving at 4 and then coming back and then leaving at 4 and then you come with your certificate and you're like, here, give me a job. And they're like, is this cool? Talk a bit about that trip into NVIDIA. Did you feel ready for that role in terms of, so was what you were speaking about what they were looking for? Or how did you transition and then become, because that's, so for context, I don't know if you guys know, NVIDIA is now the highest
it's
valued company in the world. It's overtaken Apple, it's overtaken Microsoft, highest market cap. essentially everyone who's doing AI is likely using an NVIDIA chip.
GPUs, yep.
So they've now become essentially the center of the world in the way Microsoft might have been a while ago.
Absolutely.
So I'm thinking that's a very intimidating opportunity, but also one you've kind of earned. Were you ready on day one? How did you?
I was not ready on day one because I had done a lot of Python things. And I think what maybe made me stand out in that process was I was doing a lot on my own of exploring with Python and building stuff with Python. And I was showing that I'm like open to learning. I was like very, very open to learning, and I think that helped in getting the role. When I was in the role, so my job was to work on Python on GPUs. So programming Python to be faster. So you want to process like billions of rows of data and you want to do that as fast as possible. So NVIDIA's primary business is GPUs. They used to just do GPUs for gaming, but then they obviously pivoted to now processing data with GPUs.
Yeah.
And so that was a big jump from I'm writing Python code to, for fun, I'm creating games or things like that. Or maybe doing data, like a little bit of data science stuff on my own. But then moving to, okay, I'm having to write Python code. I'm having to learn something called Python on the job. I'm having to learn C++ on the job. I had done some C++ at least a little bit before, but really the level of learning was like much higher and the expectation was very high going in. And I wasn't necessarily, I felt definitely like in the beginning, there were several days where I like cried on my own because I felt kind of overwhelmed with like, can I do this? But I had amazing teammates that if I was like open to asking questions, they were so available to asking questions. They pair programmed with me to show me like, okay, this is how you do stuff.
Yeah.
And oftentimes if you have the basics down for Python or whatever language you're doing, those basics scale well. So it's pretty much the same thing, but usually the syntax is a little bit different or, there's small changes and things, but it's pretty much the same things as you go along. So,
well, that's exciting because I think my follow-up questions are now going to start to preempt your talk.
Yeah.
But really excited to be here. I think your journey is really inspiring in the sense that I love the idea of making normal the idea of Black women in technology.
Yeah,
we remain an endangered species in that area. And then also the idea that life is not a straight line.
Yeah.
So if you show up in whatever station you're in, you do the most, then you never know when that becomes the thing that matters incredibly. And then also just putting yourself out there and staying curious and growing seems to be the key.
Yeah.
I haven't met someone who's successful who isn't about that. So thank you so much for coming. Excited to hear your talk and
excited to give it.
I'll meet up with you in the Q&A.
Okay.
For now, I'm going to drag my aching muscles over there.
Okay. I'm going to stand for my talk. I also don't
Do I have to switch off my own mic? Or can you remotely control me remotely? Just checking for a button. Okay, found it. It's still green, so I think it's on.
Cool. Okay. Right. So my talk this morning is going to be pretty brief. It's going to be a brief history of some of the parts of Python and AI. You can Google on your own, like the full history of AI or the full history of Python. Something I want to let you know is that I'm not saying that you should learn Python only, but I think it's the best language to know at the moment. It's the most popular language in the world right now. It's the most popular language on GitHub. It's the best language for AI. So everyone who's writing any AI code is using Python on the high level. Data science is Python. So I think the two are really connected together, and I'll get to that in my talk. So we talked a little bit about the fact that I'm a developer advocate. I work at Microsoft, and my job is so a developer advocate. Basically, what I do is like half of my time, maybe even more, like 60 to 70% of my time is writing code. My primary language is Python, so I write a lot of Python. I sometimes write TypeScript. I sometimes write some C++, but a lot of the times it's Python. And then the other half of my job, I really enjoy it. Like I'm here in Joburg to speak at a conference. So half of my job is actually communication stuff. So communication stuff where I'll speak at conferences or I'll do YouTube videos or I'll write, things like that. So I really enjoy that. And that's been part of my role as well. So passionate about Python and AI. I'm on GitHub, and that's something that I would recommend if any of you are interested in pursuing, a serious career. Oh my gosh, my battery. Pursuing a serious career in software engineering, and you want a way to show what you've built. GitHub is one of the main ways to do that. So building out your projects, having a cool profile that you have available on GitHub. I try to make mine really fun and yeah. Oh yes, sure. Gonna share to Zoom. Say join the computer. Oh yeah, okay. Do you have a charger, maybe a Mac charger at all?
I'll get one.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I'm just saying let me share the presentation. Let me share. All right. Great. I think I am sharing. Okay. So let's also minimize that. Cool. All right. So like I mentioned before, I think GitHub is one of the best places to show that you know how to code and that you are someone who loves to learn. So this is like one of my favorite projects that I've done that I've put on my GitHub was a machine learning project all in Python. And basically what it does is it takes real-time video and turns that video into an animation. So I did this of myself where I have a real video of myself and then I have an animated version. So really try to make it my own and really colorful and fun. And then I have a group of projects as well that I put on GitHub that I kind of rank in order of the projects that I've shared. And then I also like to share, the tools that I've built. I have a YouTube channel that I am not posting too often, but this is the sort of thing that I would definitely recommend doing is just having a good GitHub account that's fun that you can show your work on. I'm also on Twitter. I think Twitter is a fantastic platform to be able to also share your work with people who are in tech. It's a little toxic sometimes. So I'm not sure how often I would recommend being on there, but I would say that it's a great way to connect with the global Python community. I met Scott Hanselman actually, who I think talked to you the other day on Twitter. He's no longer on Twitter anymore, actually, to be fair. But there's loads of platforms, social media platforms. Choose a platform and share your work on that platform. I think that's always a powerful way to connect with people. LinkedIn as well. If any of you would like to connect with me on any of these platforms, feel free to just DM me if you don't see me there as well. All right, so this talk is going to be a mix of AI and Python chat. So a lot of people have been talking about AI, but how big is AI exactly? How excited should we be about AI? So someone called Andrew Ng, who is a professor at Stanford, he also founded Coursera. He has been quoted in the past as saying AI is bigger than electricity. And that's a pretty big deal because electricity is important. We probably would not even be here today doing computer stuff if it wasn't for electricity. So that's a pretty big deal for Andrew Ng to say that. And then another guy, Sundar Pichai, who is the CEO of Google, he has been quoted as saying that AI is not just bigger than electricity, it's bigger than fire and electricity. So, Andrew Ng was thinking too small, AI is that big. But some people think both of these are just not realistic. AI is probably even bigger than that. And there's a guy called Anthony Mandelsky who founded something which is called the Church of AI. And he has been quoted as saying AI is God. So there's a group of people somewhere in California, they meet on a Sunday or whatever day, they've decided, and they're kind of preparing for AI to take over and become God. And so they founded this church. So, I'm not saying I've given this talk a little bit before, and some people have quoted me and said, Marlene is saying AI is God. It's not God. I don't think so personally. But just to let you know how big of a deal people feel AI is. So even though AI has been popular, really the time that we saw AI really taking off was a few years ago when ChatGPT came out. And ChatGPT, in the first, the time it took to become a platform with 100 million users, it became the fastest growing platform in, the history of the world. And we see that, here, it, I think it took 2 months for it to reach 100 million active users. And this was the first time the world really got exposed to the power of AI, or just to actually be able to get a good understanding of what it looks like for us to use AI. And how many of you would say that the first time you really heard about AI was when ChatGPT was launched? Can I get a raise of hands? So that's actually most of the world. A lot of people did not know what AI was before ChatGPT became a thing. But in reality, this is not the case. What we know is that years ago, in 1967, we have something called ELIZA that was created. And ELIZA was the first chatbot, the first chatbot that was created. And basically, this was something called an NLP chatbot, and it was created with Python code. And in this, with ELIZA, basically what they would do is you use pattern recognition and very simple NLP techniques to be able to give a human-like response. So they were creating ELIZA to pass something called the Turing test. And the Turing test is a test in computer science where the goal is to create a computer program that functions so well that if a human is talking to the computer program, then the human would be convinced it's another human being. They wouldn't even recognize that it's a program. And so ELIZA was created in 1967. That's one of the first chatbots that we have, and that was years ago. So one of the cool things for Python programmers that we have is we actually can access ELIZA today. And here on the screen, I have a GitHub repository called eliza.py. So if you actually go on GitHub and just search for eliza.py, you'll be able to use it. And I just need to find out. So what we can do is we can cd into eliza.py. I think we might already be there. And okay, we're already there. And then we're going to just run Python eliza.py. And I'm going to try and remove this screen here. And here we get a welcome message from ELIZA. This is the same program that was created in 1967. And we can test and see how this has worked. So let's say, hi, ELIZA. And she says hi. So this program, like I mentioned, is supposed to act like a therapist for people. So that lady initially was asking questions, about her boyfriend or whatever, and getting therapy from ELIZA. But today we can ask questions as well. So does anyone in the audience have a good question? What do you talk to your therapist about? What's a good question that you would ask? Who wants to volunteer to give us an example? Just a short question. I don't want to type in your entire life story, please. Okay, yes. Oh, how to overcome imposter syndrome. That's great. Let's ask it, say, how do I overcome imposter syndrome? And let's see what she said. Say, what do you overcome imposter syndrome? So, okay, that's not a great answer from ELIZA. This shows you that the technology is a little old. I don't really know. You say so she's kind of repeating that. What we've asked, maybe let's ask another question. Let's say, Or let's say, how are you doing? So we're discussing you, not me. Okay, that's also a good response. Okay, let's get one more question to ask. Like, clearly, this is not a fantastic chatbot experience for us. Someone have one more question to ask you. Oh, good question. Let's see. Let's see what Eliza says there. What is the meaning of life? Why do you ask? Okay, all right. So, Eliza is great. Potentially could be a therapist in need, but really not fantastic. So what we see is that Eliza was created in 1967. So the idea of a chatbot has been around for years and years, and so we've had the framework for chatbots for a while. And over time, what has happened is that the core idea of having a chatbot and talking to a computer like a human, even though it's been around, the underlying technology has not been good. So the NLP models that are driving Eliza have not been amazing. But over time, what we've seen is that there have been landmark events in the history of computer science that have led us to, 2011, we had Google Brain, that was a better model. We had Core NLP, we had GPT released in 2018, and here in 2022, it feels like longer, but in 2022, we had the release of ChatGPT. I don't know if any of you have actually asked ChatGPT questions, but it's probably going to do a better job than Eliza. And so what I think is really important in seeing this trajectory is for us to understand that the ideas that are there in the computer science world are old ideas, but the technology is improving over time. And what this means for us is that if we combine, say, for example, you're someone who's interested in understanding creativity or the field of computer science, there's so many ideas in the past, in history, that have been around, whether that's the idea of a chatbot, or whether that's the idea of agents, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But there's so many ideas that are sitting in history that are great ideas, but the technology that was there when they were around was not great technology. And now, if we go into the past and grab those ideas and just change the underlying technology, we can have these amazing products like ChatGPT. So throughout this talk, what I want to encourage you to do is to have that mindset of starting to think, okay, can I go into history and read about the history of computer science? Can I go into history and read about what's been there in the past? And how do I take some of the ideas that maybe other people are not thinking about right now and use the current technology, like we have AI, we have better Python programs, and how can I do that to also explore on my own? So one idea, like the idea of chatbots that has been around for years, is the idea of agency. And so this is a new idea. It's an old idea, but recently has had sort of some resurgence in the world of Python and programming. So here, there is a paper that was written in 1994 by two researchers. One of them was called Michael Wooldridge. The other researcher was called Nicholas Jennings. And in this paper, they talked about intelligent agents, theory and practice. So as you can imagine, 1994, that's before I was born, personally. I'm not sure how many of you were born after 1994. I think a few of us. Okay, all right, so maybe this is under, but for most of us, this is before we were born. And that's cool to know that these ideas have actually been around for a really long time. And right now in my job at Microsoft, all we are talking about is agents. LLM, AI, agents is the main thing. And these guys have this idea in 1994, but didn't have the technology to implement it. So when we talk about AI agents, what is it? So an AI agent is a software program. So these are software-based computer systems that have the following properties. So the first property is they're autonomous. So you can tell them to do something and they'll do it without needing you to direct them or needing lots of help, you can just tell it, hey, I have this task for you to do, just do the task, and it will do that. So that's the first thing is autonomy. The second thing is that they need some sort of social ability. So what we want is we want to imagine agents being able to communicate with each other and work together. So Marlene's agent is going to be able to chat to Nyari's agent. My agent is going to say, and Nyari's agent is going to give me her. So they have to have some sort of social ability to be able to do that. And language as well plays a little bit of a role in that as well. And then they need to be reactive. So they need to be able to respond to stimulus, anything that is, if you give it a task or give it, some input, it needs to be able to respond to that and react to that in real time. And so that's also part of agents. And then the last thing is that they need to be proactive. So even if you give agents are sort of goal oriented, so you can give it a goal and it should be able to make decisions on its own. So what we're seeing, OpenAI actually just yesterday released their first agent. And with these agents, you wanted to give it a goal and you wanted to be able to decide what to do without consulting you, without coming back and saying, oh, what should I do or whatever like normal programs do, but really make decisions. So these are 4 capabilities, 4 things that agents do. And for me, in my job, I have been using, like I mentioned, I've primarily been working in Python. And so though this idea was an old idea of agents that it was written in a paper in 1994, I am using that idea now and trying to apply newer technologies, the new large language models to that idea. So what I've been building at my work is something called Contoso Creative Writer. It's one of the projects that I've worked on, and it's a multi-agent application. And so what this application does is that it writes trending articles that a marketing team at a fictional company called Contoso Outdoors, we want to get the products for this online store, and we want that agent application to write blog posts that advertise these products. And it should just write all of the blogs and put them on like a marketing website. And so we wanted to also keep up with the latest trends. If today there's a trend saying something, it should integrate those trends into the application. And so something I also want to mention is that almost all my work that I do at Microsoft is open source. So if you find me on GitHub, you can see me working and writing Python code in real time. And so if you want to take a look at this project, you can go ahead and follow this link. That's GitHub Azure Samples, Contoso Creative Writer, and feel free to take a look. Or even if you would like to contribute to the project, I'm also open to having you contribute as well. So I'm going to try. The problem is I'm going to try and give you an example of what Contoso Creative Writer looks like and how you actually deploy it. So let's go ahead and try to deploy it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cd into this folder, and then we're going to launch the Fast API application. So this is a Python Fast API application. On the back end, we are using Python to write out the application. And then on the front end, we're using TypeScript. So here, I just seeded into there. And what I'll also do is I'll go to the front end and I will launch the web browser. We're using TypeScript and NPM just to install some packages. And then that is just installing some packages for us. And I'm gonna hope this works. It might not work because I planned it a bit last minute, but let's go ahead and deploy the application just by running npm run dev. That's gonna deploy the front end of the application. And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn the ports to public. Right. Okay. See if that worked. Um, let's try this one again. Oh my gosh. Okay, we are gonna just try and launch the application. And it might not work because of the deployment time, but okay. Let me see if the ports are, okay, that's fine. So this is what the application looks like. It's a very simple application. Here on this side, on the right, we have some sections here. And so we're going to fill in this with some example data. So like I mentioned, Contoso is it's an outdoor e-commerce website, and they're trying to sell outdoor gear. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to tell our agent to research online. We want camping trends. What are the latest camping trends that you can find? And what are people doing in the winter? So we want to write an article that's based on camping trends in the winter. And then the second thing is that we want to put in products from our company's website, from our store, into the article as well. Make sure that those products are referenced. And then the next thing is that we're just giving it a summary of the things that we wanted to write. So I'm going to say that we wanted to write a fun and engaging article that includes research and product information. The article should be between 800 and 1,000 words. And then I'm going to click start work, and I'll hope that it runs. It might not, but okay, great, it's running. So here on this side, what we can see in real time is what's happening. So the first agent task is that it's going to go online and it's going to research for me. So it's going to look for websites that have information about camping trends in the winter. Then the second task that's going to run is that we are going to grab in some information about products. So we have tent information, and we have sleeping bag information like we asked it to include. And then finally, the writer agent is going to get started writing our article. And as you can see, it wrote the article on our behalf. And then the final thing was that there's also an editor agent. So what we also want to see is that we want agents to be able to self-improve on their own. So we wanted to be able to, the writer first completes writing the article, and then after it writes the article, it sends that article to the editor, and then the editor then will read the article and see, should I suggest some changes? It's saying, actually, the article is well written, and then it might give some little tips to say, ensure the product links are functional, things like that. And then it says, no feedback needed, so go ahead and print the article to the website. And so what this does is that it's taking out, it's doing things autonomously, it's improving itself autonomously as well. So this is the website, and this is what ultimately we have for our blog, and we can already go and publish that if we click to see the links that it's found for some sources of outdoor information. It might take a little bit to load. But it should ideally take us to some sort of a report that will give us information, or maybe let me try this source, maybe it'll load faster. But this is the product. Yeah, there we go. So it's grabbing information from sources here online that it found. So like I mentioned before, all of this is in Python. All of this builds on concepts that you are probably learning in your classes right now. But what it's doing is that we're grabbing some ideas from the past, 1994, the 60s, whatever, and we're bringing those ideas into the present moment, and we're also combining it with the latest technology. I'm using GPT 4.0 at the moment to be able to build this out and have this work. But every single thing, except for the front end is TypeScript, but most of the work is being done in Python. So that is pretty much the end of my talk. Thank you for listening. If you want to test this out, it's available online. Again, find me on GitHub, find me on Twitter, X, find me on LinkedIn if you want to chat. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. And I would love to see, if you would like to learn more about this project, if you want to contribute code to it, look at the code, send me a pull request, and we can also be coding together. So yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you very much. So we're gonna open it up for questions.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'll make this a rolling slide.
Yes.
Are you logged into the Zoom call there?
I am logged into the Zoom. Yes.
If you could just check the chat so that if
Okay.
there's anything coming in from Cape Town,
Okay. Yes.
I will. You don't have to worry. I'll watch it for you.
Okay. Perfect.
But starting with the room here, any questions? No questions. There's a question. That's right.
Show meeting. Okay. I'm gonna log in. Okay. Great. Yes. Just gonna have the Zoom.
Okay, hello guys. My name is Mangaliso. I wanted to ask in terms of Python, when it comes to contributing to actual libraries that are inside of Python, how's the process and how do I go about doing that?
Do you mean like contributing code to projects and things in Python?
Contributing code to Python itself.
Okay, yeah. So Python is an open source language. So what that means is that if you go on GitHub right now and you look for the Python program, all of the source code for Python is available online. And you can go to that project, familiarize yourself with the project. They actually have a guide for contributing. So I think it's cool. I think it's if you even just Google Bing search, Google, C Python
Yes.
contributor guide. You should find the contributor guide. And I think that's a great way to get started. They are very open to contributions, even if you just want to put in PRs about, small typos that you see or things that can just help the project make things clearer. You can do that on GitHub. The code is available online.
Okay, so last question. How much have you contributed to the actual Python?
To actual Python, I have contributed a little bit. I mainly I did contribute to the developer guide. I also had been working to contribute to WASM, which is like a newer Python on the web thing. One thing I will say is that if you want to contribute core features to Python, you really have to be comfortable with it and also be able to advocate for why you want the changes. Because for smaller changes, if they can merge them in, not a big deal. For bigger changes for the Python code, just because the world is using this code, you're going to have to argue for why your changes need to be, merged into the project. And so because of that, I wouldn't say I've contributed like significantly to the core language, just because there's a whole process to do it. Sometimes people have to put in something called pips to get them approved. But I have contributed a little bit, but yeah, you just need to be prepared.
Yeah, and the experience of like having to push it.
Of what?
Like of contributing, how was the experience, the overall experience to what you contributed?
I mean, for the small changes, like documentation changes, positive experience, very quick.
Okay.
You just put in a PR, easy to do that. Larger changes, I wouldn't say it's a positive experience. I mean, it's like something that's like you have to put in enough work to do it. I just have not put in the work to do much larger changes. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. No problem.
I'm hearing you talk about Python, right? I just want to ask if would you advise somebody who finds a language that they really like and understand, and would you advise someone to be niched into like one language?
That's a good question. So what I would say is that I would choose one language to become an expert in. So choose the language that you want to say, I'm going to be an expert in this field and go really deep with that language, know the ins and out. If you know the underlying code, do that. Go deep into one language. But I would not say I wouldn't say the only language you should know is one language. You should also know the others, maybe from a user perspective of just like um, build projects with the other things. Like I know I've built stuff with JavaScript and things like that. And also I would say like it's very helpful to know some of the lower level languages, like a C++ or a C sharp, those sorts of languages that are a bit lower level than Python are very good. And also like the job market is really good for those jobs, for those languages. So what I would say is know enough languages, enough to be able to do, very basic things in those languages, but then choose one language to go very deep and be an expert in that one language. But I would say maybe choose like a language like Python and then choose a lower level language, maybe choose a C++ or a Java or something, one of the no, the older languages. Great question. Any other questions?
So I have two questions actually. The first one is like what resources did you use to learn Python, and what study methods were you using?
The second one was?
No, the first one is what resources and study methods were you using to learn Python?
I see. Okay. So resources, I love YouTube. I think YouTube has so many good resources, like videos of YouTube. Just when I was getting started, if you want to build projects, I would just Google Python projects or things like that. Or like maybe if I'm thinking of a framework like Django or something, I would Google a course on YouTube. I'm saying Google so much. I'm so sorry, Satya. Satya is somewhere, the CEO of Microsoft, hating on me. Sorry. But like, I think look for YouTube videos. And I would say do a course on that because it's free. And it's a great it's a great way to build up your GitHub repository because a lot of these courses are going to give you projects that you can put on GitHub. Another thing I would say is there's a website called Real Python. So if you just go realpython.org, that's a great site. I think they have so many good resources, such good like fundamentals. Real Python, one of my favorite places to be for learning. And then the third site is if you do want to actually pay for a course to do, Pluralsight is one of, I would say, the better sites where I love Pluralsight courses. They have a good Python course, which takes you from like lower level understanding how Python works to building stuff out as well. So those three are my favorite resources. Then you said study methods. I didn't have study methods. I built projects. Building projects was my daily bread. If I think something is interesting, or if I hear about a new technology that is come out or that people are talking about, I look for a framework to build the projects in. I build the project. I put it on GitHub. That was it. For me, that's mainly, I view coding a lot like a trade in terms of building. So I feel like that is like one way to do it. I will say, if you do want to go into more technical roles that are like at a company like NVIDIA, for example, there is some studying that you need to do for like understanding how GPUs work or things like that. And with that, I think I just did like normal school studying. I didn't really have techniques. I would just like memorize stuff or like write notes down over and over again, things like that.
Okay. Since you said you did a lot of projects, what was your hardest project?
What was
Your hardest project to do?
before I joined Microsoft? The one I showed earlier of building this real-time thing where we take my video and then turn it into an animation. That's my favorite project by far. And I shared that on Twitter and it got like 5,000 likes or something. So that was amazing at the time. And I think that's my favorite project that I built today.
Any questions?
That code as well is on my GitHub. So if you want to take a look at that code, it's all on my GitHub. So yeah.
Afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
My lady, when you spoke, you did mention that you made mention about something like AI agents,
Mm.
and then how you would prefer them to do autonomous tasks on their own.
Yeah.
So, and then I would like to ask more about the regulation side. Like, how are we sure that those agents won't, like, in the near future, like, create their own intelligence that it would be difficult for humans to comprehend?
That will be difficult for us to
Understand. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question as well. And so there's a whole field on AI ethics and AI safety because I think the issue with agents becoming more and more autonomous, they're making decisions on their own, they're getting better, they're self-learning. It comes with some risks. We're not sure that they're not going to do something wild or take over the world. That's something we're not sure about. What I do know is that their organizations, Microsoft has a whole department that's dedicated to researching and creating scenarios, worst case scenarios, and putting in guardrails and safety. I think Scott probably talked about safety when he came, AI safety stuff when he came. So there's like tons of departments that are doing research on this. For myself, I'm not an expert enough in the safety aspect to know what we can do to protect like completely protect ourselves from it. But I do think it's interesting, and there's some people writing amazing things, debating about it. That's more, I think, like a philosophy type question. So yeah.
Afternoon, everyone. My question is, so let's say I'm starting to be comfortable in Python. Where would I start if I had an interest in AI? And is it also possible to have two agents training each other?
Yeah, I think where is a good place to start? Where's a good place to start with AI? Andrew Ng actually has a bunch of great courses that are like intro to AI courses. That's a good place to start. They're free. I think if you just Google Andrew Ng AI, Bing search Andrew Ng AI, please do that today. If you Bing search Andrew Ng AI courses, some stuff will come up. I think those courses are great. But my thing is, if you're just doing an intro and want to just get started building fun things, I would go on YouTube. I would go on YouTube. I'd look for building an AI project or something like that and watch someone else building something and then copy what they've built. So exactly what and usually those people will share the code as well, the GitHub code for what they're building. So my YouTube is probably my go-to for when I'm wanting to test stuff out. And then the second question was agents training each other. Yeah, yes, that's definitely something that is happening, where agents can train each other, or there's something called reinforcement learning. So what you can do is like have one agent respond to another agent, and then you kind of tweak the two together. So there's lots of multi-agent systems, and actually a lot of the agent stuff that we have now in its current form has been built by games or simulating, having one agent be simulating it as one game character and the second one being simulated as a second game character. And then those games, them just like giving space for them to play with each other in like a virtual space, if that makes sense. So yes, that is there. OpenAI has papers on it. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing is that they're doing research on it at the moment. And I think the measures in place is that the LLMs, most LLMs have guardrails. And so the guardrails are built into those LLMs. So Azure OpenAI stuff has guardrails built into it. So an AI cannot do certain things. Like right now, if you go and talk to ChatGPT, it's unlikely to swear or use, bad language when it's responding to you. And that's because there are guardrails in place to stop it from doing that. So they're doing the research, they're thinking about different scenarios and putting those guardrails in. So, yeah. Yes. Do you mean ChatGPT is doing research? No, when I'm saying research, I mean the researchers at the companies behind the LLMs are the ones that are doing the research on ethics and like, okay, which scenarios can we protect against? Swearing is one scenario. So they're looking at what are bad things happening in the world. Swearing can sometimes be a bad thing, or discrimination can be a bad thing. And so they're trying to do the research on how do we have the LLMs behave in a certain way, because you can control it to a certain extent.
I have a question about, well, more so about preparing to enter the job market. When you talked about your journey, but when you were in that year at Harare, what advice would you perhaps give to some of us who are preparing to enter the job market perhaps next year?
Yeah.
In the year coming that we are preparing and learning skills, what resources would you recommend, for us to look out for? What things can we do to maybe, make us stand out more, for that next year, with a better chance?
That's a great question. I think the number one thing that I would recommend is decide on the job that you want and then do that job before you're doing the job. Does it make sense? Like, even when I was hired for this current role, that was the feedback that I got from the final interview. Was just like, yeah, we decided to hire you because you're already doing the role. Like, you're basically already doing it. And I think that's a big way that you can get yourself ahead is, say you want to be a Python developer or a developer in some way, like look online and see, go to job descriptions, see what are the job people, the recruiters looking for. Check in the job description, what skills are they looking for? What, projects are they looking for? Things like that. Maybe even look for an employee that's currently working for the company you want to work for. Message them on LinkedIn, hey, I'm thinking about applying, would love advice on things I can work on to be a better candidate. Is there anything you can point me to do that? And I would say, just positioning yourself so that you have the skill set that they're looking for. And then going above and beyond that, it's like sharing projects online. I would say that's one of the biggest things as well, is like for me in my journey, building stuff, putting it on GitHub, sharing projects when I built them. But probably my primary piece of advice is like decide on the job you want to do and do that job before you actually get there. So cool.
Thank you very much. Is that okay?
Oh, okay. No, not good.
Okay. I was watching it and I hadn't seen anything.
Okay.
Was with saying Tender.
Thanks.
Right. So thank you all very much. Thank you for your time. I think if the placements team was watching, they're going to thank you very much, because I was in a big strat session with them, and they've been reviewing a lot of the data on our students to understand which people get placed quickly and easily you're in South Africa, the jobs are coming out, you're coming out of school all at the same time, there's more competition. And so thinking beyond that, and I think your story is really exciting in that you're sitting in Harare and you're applying there and you're working there.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if you've seen the exchange rate, that's sweet. Every time the rand falls,
Yeah. It
your
was
salary
a
increases.
good life. I saved a lot of money. I'm telling you.
I wish I could take my American salary and live in South Africa. That would have been the best of things. So I think really appreciative of that, and just that your commitment to craft is incredibly inspiring. Just this idea that I'm going to make myself better, not because someone told me to, not because someone paid me to, but because I want to be better. And then I think it then shows in your journey and trajectory, because then the world respects that and rewards it. So thank you so much for your time.
No problem.
Thank you to our audience.
Thank you for a great question.
We have new house rules, which have probably primarily been created by the fact that I'm an introverted speaker. It's incredibly emotionally overwhelming when 100 people come and they all just want selfies with you. So I think when Scott was here, you thought I was just being mean. It's a lot. So we will do group photos if you like group photos, but we're not going to do 300 selfies with a busy person who has flown from far. How long was your flight? Like 12, 14 hours? And then 14 hours to get here, and then have her standing for 300 photos. So just to give you guys context on why I have sensitivity about that, because I've been that person, and you're like,
Yeah.
it's a lot. So we can do a few group photos, maybe about 3 group photos, and then you can point to your friends on your head in the picture. Yeah. But it's just trying to manage your energy. And so, yeah, on that high note, we stop. Thank you all very much for being an amazing audience. We hope to have more speakers.
Yes.
I'm sure Marlene will come back.
Yes.
I'm sure when you're applying for your jobs at Microsoft, she will look upon you with
I
kindness.
will, exactly.
And thank you very much.